Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Guess what? Teen Talk Live is back, and we are so excited to be entering our third season. Right? I am just so excited. My name is Dillard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the host of Teen Talk Live, where we share interesting topics that help to transform minds and lives of teens, of course, and those who love them. So I am excited that you're here with me tonight, and we have a special guest, my colleague, my fellow LMFT colleague, Kristen Boice. And Kristen is also a certified Daring Way facilitator. So I know that we can talk vulnerability and shame all day long. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Anne, for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about the mother-daughter relationship.
Yes, that is such an important topic. So would you please tell our viewers, how did you come by this work, and why is this such an important part of what you chose to do?
Been an interesting journey. I actually grew up with my mom being a marriage and family therapist. Wow. So I grew up being a little psychoanalyzed by my mother. So that relationship has been an imperative part of my journey and the reason I'm here. So what really propelled me to this work is a keen curiosity about people, their stories, why they behave, why they feel, why they act the way they do. I love really getting underneath what really motivates people and relationships. Keen curiosity about people, their stories, why. So I love this work. It lights me up every single day to see people kind of get underneath where they feel stuck and free themselves in the process.
Yes, I too love this work. And, we share similar beliefs that the mother-daughter relationship is probably the most relationship that you can have, because it kind of sets the foundation and the blueprint for all other relationships.
It certainly does. And I think the power of this relationship, when a mother comes in and does the work, it changes the relationship, not only for the daughter, but for her and the rest of the family. And when the daughter comes in and does the work, it can change her life, not only with her mother, but with whoever she chooses as a partner, and then her kids moving forward. So I think it's generational work. It can change generational patterns, and that's what excites me.
Yes, and I like to call it's legacy building.
Yes.
So we get to decide what legacy do we want to pass on to our children, our children's children, and so this work is so important.
It is probably the most important work I think someone can do.
Absolutely. So today we're looking at a specific part of the mother-daughter relationship. And there is a part where there is a loss because of a lack of connection, lack of, I'm not even sure what the right word is, but when one party is unavailable to participate in a mutual relationship, and we call that ambiguous loss. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about ambiguous loss, and then what might that look like in the mother-daughter relationship?
Yes, I think a lot of times people come into therapy and they don't have a name for it. They're not sure what to call it when their mom might not have been emotionally available. Maybe they lost mom to alcohol or drugs. Maybe mom was simply working and she just couldn't be present with the child or the teen or the adult child. And so they come in with this sense of loss. It could be that mom had a mental illness. Maybe mom suffered from depression and simply just wasn't able to caretake emotionally the child. And so I'll see often what that looks like is the child longing, and it could be vice versa, the mother longing for the connection with the child, and perhaps the child or the teen has an alcohol or drug problem and they're not available for connection. Or perhaps it's boundaries, where the teen has set some boundaries and no longer wants a connection with the parent. So what I find a lot is, first of all, naming it, because it can help acknowledge what someone is going through, that grief and that sense of loss and that sense of feeling lost, helpless, and powerless.
Yes. Yes, that is so important, because when a parent dies, right, as painful as it is, there is some ceremonial event that takes place that kind of helps you put it all together or frame it, right? That, okay, they are not physically here anymore. But when we're talking about somebody is physically there in the body, but you're not able to connect relationally, that feels so slippery.
It does. I'll give you an example from my own life where I think this played out, because I think those are the most powerful ways to connect to this sense of ambiguous loss. My parents got divorced when I was in third grade. And the mother I had prior to the divorce was very emotionally available, physically affectionate, attentive to my needs. And when they got divorced, I felt like that mom died. And the mom I had was no longer. She did the best she could. Of course, this isn't to vilify her, or a lot of people don't want to blame anybody, and that's not the intention, but it's to acknowledge. When I finally put that together and I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt like I lost the mom I had.
Yeah.
Because she had to go back to work. She had to pay the bills. She was busy. She had a lot emotionally going on. And so that was part of what I worked through, was grieving that loss of the mom I had before the divorce and then after the divorce. Yeah. And that was a powerful pivot in my life.
My goodness. I imagine how challenging that can be.
Yes. And I think to name it, people feel a lot of guilt because they feel like, well, my mom was a good mom, or I don't want to make my mom wrong or bad. And so people have a hard time. They want to protect their parent in order to maintain the relationship with the parent. And so to be able to say, oh, that makes sense of why I was in so much pain, why that hurt so much, why I felt so sad. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was also about that relationship that I once had. So I think this is an example of what might look like ambiguous loss for someone else. It doesn't have to look exactly like that, but that kind of puts a story to what ambiguous loss looks like.
Right. I think that's a really great example. And another thing that I think about is in some instances, the mother is not able to take care of the child for whatever reason, and then a lot of times a grandparent steps in, or an older adult steps in and facilitate and becomes the primary caregiver, right? Yeah. And so the child forms that attachment to that caregiver, and now there's a loss.
Yes.
And we don't necessarily know how to put words to that, but you just know that you're feeling a loss.
Yes, and I think we call it depression. Some people will say, I feel depressed. I feel anxious might be another way, but I feel depressed. They don't can't put the reason why. They kind of have a sense of why. Once they start to name it as ambiguous loss, it starts to begin that healing process to say, yes, that makes sense, that those are appropriate feelings to have given circumstances. That makes sense that you would have those feelings given circumstances, and it's okay to have those feelings. A lot of times we're told, you're fine, shake it off, or we're disciplined out of it, and we stuff those feelings down, and that stunts our growth.
Or how about this? Well, at least you had a mom.
Absolutely. That at least you.
At least you, and that, I mean, there's no validation, there's no
Acknowledge.
no no acknowledgement, right, of how you feel. And then you can end up struggling so much with that, being in that space.
Yeah, you feel shame and guilt because you're like, well, I shouldn't feel like that. If that person over here has it worse than me, then I shouldn't be feeling this way. They do have it worse than me.
Right.
Now I'm stuck in shame and guilt versus moving through the grief.
Exactly. And there is a grieving process that goes on with any kind of loss, whether it's a physical loss or whether it's like we're talking about, an ambiguous loss. And I think you did an excellent job of describing circumstances that shows what ambiguous loss looks like.
Yes. And I think for a lot of teens, including myself at the time, I kept trying to get that connection. I kept trying to rekindle the relationship we once had. I tried to get back the mom that I had at one point, and she was doing the best she could, but she wasn't available. And so that longing, and you keep trying. I think people keep trying and keep trying because they're trying to heal that part of themselves, that unmet need, that part that says, do you see me? Do you love me? Do you understand me? Do you see my pain? And
Yeah.
sometimes that role gets flipped. And so the child ends up kind of caretaking the mother versus the mother caretaking the child,
Yeah.
especially in those teen years.
And that's one of the relationship types that I talked about last week when I was talking about the 9 different types of mother-daughter relationships. And I think it's really important to um, to dig deeper into this, because what are some of the things that can happen to a daughter? Let's say a daughter who has this loss, whether it's to absence due to lack of that emotional connection, or absence due to drugs, or whatever the circumstance may be. What are some of the implications of that losses like those?
I find that people want to fill that hole in their soul, and they look outside of themselves to say, who, one, to numb the pain, if that's what's going on, to move away from it. So they might use love addiction. So they're going to look for a man or a woman, it doesn't matter who, to try to get that need filled.
Mhm.
So they're going to say, do you love me? Do you care about me? Don't you want me? Don't you see me? See how much don't you see how much I'm worth? I mean, or they don't feel like they're worthy, but that they're looking outside of it. So they might get a love addiction. They might turn to alcohol and drugs. They might get addicted to social media. They may numb with video games, gambling, shopping, eating. And I find that people try to heal that through other relationships.
Wow.
So they're searching for that relationship that will replace or repair that relationship they didn't get with their mother.
Wow. I mean, I think that's powerful because, you know, a clinical term, and I try not to use too many clinical terms, but a clinical term would be maladaptive behaviors, behaviors that are not productive to one's life, right? So go looking for a relationship to kind of get something or someone to fill that void.
And I think that's the number one. If I had to do it all the years of my work and my practice, I really think relationships is where people try to find that healing. And what we end up finding is we want someone else to be that idealized parent we didn't get. And then they pull the curtain back and we're like, oh, well, you're not that person. And now they go through another loss. That's another ambiguous loss because now they had put their projected they put on this other person. You're going to, because it looks all great and shiny at the beginning.
Yes.
And then they pull the curtain back and then they have to go through the grief of, oh, well, that's the same wounding as I got.
Same wounding, different faces.
I say it's always in a different package. You pick the same thing in a different package.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they have their own stuff.
That is so true. And that, I realized also that when working with families who are experiencing this, a lot of times in the daughter relationship, what I've noticed is she can be very hard on herself. She can also have very low self-esteem
Yes.
and high expectation of herself, right? And
Yes. Very high, unrealistic.
very high unrealistic expectations of herself, and and sometimes challenges with boundaries.
Oh, yes, and perfectionism. We know that's the way we're trying to kind of say, I am worthy, I do matter, I am important. And so we get to people pleasing.
Yeah,
We say yes when we mean no. We become this compliant child, the compliant pleaser. We placate, we perform, we perfect, we pretend. Um, and we don't have help. Like you said, there's the boundaries have kind of gone out the window because I don't want to go through rejection. I don't want to go through abandonment. So if I say yes, then they'll accept me and love me.
absolutely. And with this child also, and we're talking about mother daughter and ambiguous loss, with this child also is susceptible to being in a abusive intimate partner relationship,
Yes.
because you're trying, and you just have to fix it. You're trying to make right what went wrong in your core primary relationship.
Absolutely. It's very reflective of alcohol or drug abuse, living with a alcoholic or addicted parent. It's this very similar look.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And in those parenting dyads, there's also a big loss, and in a couple of weeks I'm going to have a drug and alcohol expert to come on and talk about addiction in the mother-daughter relationship and what that looks like.
That'll tie into this perfectly.
Perfectly.
Perfectly, because they're very, that is one of the subsets of ambiguous loss.
Yes,
One out of either the daughter or the mother suffering from addiction.
yes,
That definitely is painful, extremely painful and traumatic for
yes,
both parties involved.
yes. And the realization is so key. um I really like this therapy model that is called contextual therapy, and it's not a very popular model of therapy. And the developer of it is Ivan, long name, Naj.
It's a Naj, it's Naj. Yeah.
Right, Naj, right. And so he talks about the fact that we are all born with a ledger, and what we do is we enter relationships trying to always balance that ledger. So the concept of this theoretical model is that we give what was given to us, but we take away from other relationships what was taken away from us in efforts to balance this ledger.
And what we're trying to do ultimately is get our needs met.
Exactly. That's it.
That's it. The bottom line, the five love languages, I feel like are a manifestation of the needs, one developmentally, that we are supposed to have and didn't get. So I really think the unmet needs drive the behavior.
That is so true. And I think that's so key because, and again, we're talking about mother daughter, but this applies to mother son, whatever, wherever there is an unmet need, right? And it's like you try so hard to use other methods to fill those needs, and you end up, and this is where you end up what repeating patterns that we call like generational curses.
And we really don't want to repeat the pattern.
We don't.
I am not going to do it. I am not going to be like my mom. or I'm not going to be like whoever, the primary caregiver. I am not going to be like them. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I am unconsciously acting the same, or it might not look the same, but I'm creating the same result. I'm not meeting the need.
Wow.
Not meeting the need.
And that's from unmet needs. So I would like to challenge my audience to say, what are some of the unmet needs in your life? And can you trace it back to not being able to receive that in your primary parental relationship?
And here's some of them to give them a cheat sheet. From the 5 love, we can go physical touch. We were meant to be held, papooned, cuddled, rub our backs, snuggled,
Swaddled
for most of our childhood. Misnomer. Like we say, cry it out. I'm like, well, they are giving you a signal. Physical touch, we see a lot of men in particular and women suffering from physical touch. And we can see it in the mother-daughter relationship. Hugs are imperative to the connection between a mother-daughter, any mother-parent, but mother-daughter is imperative. So
let me stop you right there.
Yes.
What if hugs are not something that's demonstrated in your culture?
Yeah, but there's the need. There's the loss. We don't even know we have that need. We don't even, because we think it's not okay. We don't even know the difference. It might be so unconscious, right? And sometimes physical touch is not safe. That became trauma. Which
All
is
touch, not safe touch.
Yes.
Right.
So it's meant to be safe. It's meant to be consistent. All of these have to be consistent. That's what creates the connection in the mother-daughter relationship.
Well, here again, Kristen, now what if you had a mother or a primary caregiver who you felt like you had to earn physical touch or earn kind words, right? How about in that relationship dynamics, when if I wasn't pleased with you and your behavior, I withdraw and withhold those things from you.
Which then shows up as what we call little t trauma. It says, I have to perform, I have to please you, I have to accommodate you in order to have worth and value and get my needs met. So then what do? We take that conditioning, and now it's in all my relationships.
Exactly.
That is the conditioning that I now have as a blueprint. I don't know any different. I'm going to function from that place now in all my relationships.
Wow. That's good stuff. Okay, so we only talked about physical touch.
Physical touch. I see that one a lot. We have kind of words of affirmation, which is really affirming the child, not about how they look, about who they are, and acknowledging the feelings. This is where the wheels kind of come off the bus, because we're conditioned a lot of times out of our feelings, shamed out of them. If you've watched the movie Inside Out, I'm a big fan on the core emotions because that's based on neuroscience. So
Yeah.
if we weren't allowed to feel our feelings, if we weren't allowed to be sad, what did we do when we were afraid? If we were disgusted, if we had anger, joy, happiness, excitement, how were those handled?
Right.
They were acknowledged by the parent. The parent said, it's okay to have your feelings, which most parents didn't say that, by the way. They didn't know this information. It's okay to let it out. It's all right, sweetie. I see you're afraid. We got this. We can do this. That's what acknowledgement looks like.
Right. Well, here, when you talked about words, you said not about who you are
or how you look,
right? But about who you are. I would also add, not about what you do.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Well, about who you are from the core, as or who you see that person as being. So you might not be acting appropriate right now, but I know that you are a leader. I know that you have kindness in you. I know that, just stuff like that.
Yeah. And I can see you have some feelings underneath this. It's not about the behavior. Something else is going on. It's like when my daughter gets in the car and it's like, all right, I'll give her a minute, but I know something's happened today. And I might give her some time.
Why didn't you automatically think it was all about you?
Yeah, because I work every day at doing my own work.
That
is the key to that. I practice it. I can't do this work without doing my own work. If I didn't do my own work, oh my gosh, everything would be taken personally, right?
And sometimes I still
do. I do too.
Whew.
Oh, every day.
Yeah, but knowing that, you know what, maybe something else is going on. Maybe they had an argument with their friends. It's not all about me.
Because if I'm recognizing my unmet needs, I'm responsible for filling them. So if we go back to physical touch, we go back to kind of acknowledging the feelings, they're all rooted. Ambiguous loss is rooted in unmet needs. It's grief over not getting those needs met. And we were meant to get those needs met. Mm-hmm. Our parents did the best they could. And I always like the word and, not but. It's like taking an eraser. And it doesn't negate how we feel.
That's right.
Our feelings matter.
That's right. And so you can hold both realities in the same space.
I'm all about the and. I love the and because it creates more expansion in the thinking instead of getting it so right or wrong, good or bad.
Yes.
We can hold space to make it an and. So I can acknowledge your feelings and have mine.
Yes. And you know what? I call that the grace space. I can give you grace in that space, but I can also give myself grace.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. So we did
physical touch. We've got the acknowledging the feelings, words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Okay.
Okay. Acts of service. Now, this means that I was taken care of. So I had my physical needs. There was a roof over my head. I had food on the table. I had laundry done. I had someone help groom me when I was a baby and so on, taught me this. I had somebody teach me about hygiene. I had someone, when I got a boo-boo, care about me and take care of me and tend to my needs and nurture me. That's acts of service. So when my mom, to give you an example on this unmet need, when my mom went back to work, I was left to empty the dishwasher, take out the trash, do my meals, get myself ready for bed, get myself, my own lunch. I wouldn't change all that. It's awareness. It's self-awareness to see, why do I have that as my love language? Oh, because I was highly responsible at a young age. Now it's helped me in my life, and I so appreciate it when someone vacuums the carpet. Oh my gosh. I'm like, thank you. It's a deep gratitude.
Yeah. They're speaking.
I'm not having to do it.
They're speaking love to you.
They're speaking love to me. So that's an unmet need. That's an example of an unmet need. Wow. And why it's part of my love language. Now, is it on somebody else to fill that in me? No, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Somebody else can't do what my parent was supposed to do. I have to do that for me. And that's an important part of a parent's job. Now, a teen is learning how to move through the emotions and start identifying maybe where they have some unmet needs and maybe where they need some support in that area. Wow. So that's just an example of the other. So we've got physical touch, we've got words of affirmation, we've got acts of service.
Yes.
Now, the other one on the list is quality time that I think is imperative.
Oh my.
Quality time is essential for the mother-daughter in any parent-child relationship, but in particular the mother-daughter relationship, in order to create that connection, that safety, that consistency. And that looks like, again, acknowledging the feelings, right. Doing what the kid wants to do, not just what mom wants to do. Right. Really it's not just in front of a TV zoning out. We're actually in conversation without our phones.
Yeah.
We are actually creating some connection time. Now that's harder because teens are on their phones a lot. So I know a lot of parents feel this disconnection.
Well, a lot of parents are on their phones too.
You know what? I see this, and I think the parents on the phone, especially in infancy, is now going to create a lot of attachment issues, which is another episode.
Yes.
But
We need to
yes,
come back and talk about attachment.
yes, yes.
That's really important.
It's so important. And I think the quality time is one that people at first have a hard time identifying. And then when they want to be, if they're in a relationship or a teen is craving a relationship, I often say, oh, is quality time what you're really looking for? Some time, someone paying attention to you, someone acknowledging you, someone, that's when we feel important and that we matter and we're lovable and we're worthy because you want to be with me.
Yes.
So we'll see in teens, they're seeking that out. And that's one that I'll say, oop, we got an unmet need there.
Yes. And sometimes, and this is a hard one for me to get some of my parents to do. It's like they're like, well, they're always playing video games. And I'm like, well, what if you ask them to show you how to play a game? Well, I don't think that's healthy. But it doesn't matter. It's not what you necessarily want to do, but you are coming alongside them to say, hey, I care enough about you to engage in what you enjoy.
Exactly. And you're showing interest
Yes.
in what they enjoy. And
Yes.
obviously teens like to connect with their friends, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about on a continuum,
Right.
what those teens that are looking outside for someone else's attention is in an intense way is probably because they need some more quality time.
Right. Well, let me just pause just a minute because we've been talking and I haven't even acknowledged my guests. Thank you all so much for joining. If you're still here with us, just drop a hello in the comment. And it is so important. And Joseph says, like the use of the 5 love language as it relates to the mother-daughter relationship. I am loving this. This is so amazing because we've often talked about the 5 love language in couples relationship, but to correlate it to the mother-daughter relationship, I think that is so valuable. So thank you all who are watching. I'm just so excited. Saber, thank you for being here. Mercedes, thank you for being here. Joseph, thank you for being here. Mary, thank you for joining. I'm excited that you all are watching. And again, if you're still here, just say hi so we can I didn't mean to ignore you all. This is so good. And I just wanted to pause to acknowledge our guests. So we've gotten, how many have we got so far?
We've got the 4. We have one more left.
Okay. All right.
One more left. And this one is, so I'm taking a deconstruction of the 5 love languages as it relates to mother-daughter parenthood relationship. And this helps us navigate how are we doing as a parent, and then talking to our teen about what they might need that they might not be getting. And I love that question. How are we doing in these areas, and explaining what they are. The 5th area is gifts. And this is not what people think. A lot of people think, well, you just want all this stuff and you are a shopaholic and you just want gimme, because teens like the stuff. It's marketing, right? I mean, this is the cool. And what it really is, if you really get underneath that, they want to know that you get them, that you know them, that you understand them. And I encourage mothers to leave their teen notes.
Yes.
Post-it notes, little notes, hide them under their pillow, put them in, their backpack, put them on their cell phone, attach it to their cell phone, handwritten notes to say, I see you. I'm so glad you were born. I am so happy you're my daughter. Wow. It is one of the most powerful things. I am just I adore you. I adore you. Little things like that. And you put it on their pillow. That's one of my favorite things to do. I stick it on the pillow. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom. And I don't care. I'm like, I'm the cheesy mom. I'm like, this is to show you. It's the thoughtfulness. That's what gifts are. It's the thoughtfulness that you get me. And I think that's the misnomer about gifts.
Yeah. You know what? Last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we were at the Diversity in Parenting Conference, right? And I was teaching a workshop, and we had a daughter. We had a question from my mother-daughter game, and the question was, the daughter got the question. It was, I feel important when. And so she looked at her mom and she said, I feel important when you bring me something that I didn't ask for. And what you said is just it. You get me, you see me, you're appreciating me. And so it's not about getting the latest thing or the newest electronic or newest shoes or brand name anything. It's just about I see you and you're important.
And there was one example of this that I saw that a dad, actually, it was a dad, wrote a post-it note every single day of this girl's life. And
Wow.
she put it in a frame. She saved them all, put them in a frame. And for his birthday, I want to say it was his 50th birthday or something, put it in a frame and gave it to him. This was a stepdad. It wasn't even, I mean, but this stepdad can play an important role in somebody's life. And never underestimate. But the fact that he showed up, he acknowledged her. Now, you don't have to go every day. I mean,
Right.
I once a week, write a note and saying, hey, I noticed this in you, and I'm wondering how you felt about such and such. Even saying something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really makes a huge difference to say, you see me. We all want to feel seen. We all want to feel like you get me and that you matter and I'm important.
That
These 5 help developmentally the mother-daughter relationship to say, I've been consistent. The one thing we know that helps children feel secure with mothers or in the parent relationship, again, I can't emphasize this enough, is consistency.
that is so
The brain can rest and digest instead of being in survival, fight, flight, or freeze. No one wants to live in fight, flight, or freeze where we feel hijacked. We want to feel rest and digest. We want to feel like, and meeting those 5 love languages, to put them in a different way, help really create that safety.
Yeah.
And that security.
I think that is so key, because when your behaviors are predictable as a parent, that helps to put your child in rest.
Exactly.
They
Are we going to do this perfect? No.
There's
no such thing. And if anyone pretends like they're doing it perfect, I'm like, now wait a minute, let's be honest. I mean, we all have our stuff.
Right.
It's owning it. It's taking responsibility, circling the wagon and say, hey, in our family, I say my inner child came out and they're like, oh my gosh, mom. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a therapist. But I had a little fit. I got dysregulated and I can see it really scared you.
So now
acknowledge that.
Here's my question for you. What about the mother? And I'm putting the mother because she is the adult, we suppose. What about the mother who's not able to own that? Who's not able to be in that space?
There's your ambiguous loss. There it is, right there. There it is. It feels so, it's grief. It's so much grief because you want so much. Every child wants so much to connect with their mother. And I do believe the mother wants to connect with the child. I do believe they're trying to do the best they can. I do. And when the mother's not available, or the child, whichever, that is so much pain. It's just pain. It's grief. It's sadness.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And I know in some spaces, especially in some cultures, it's hard to say, to admit that, I'm sorry I didn't do that right, or I'm sorry you felt that way, or I'm sorry you had that experience. It feels blaming. Like if I say I'm sorry, it erases everything else that I did. I worked hard for you. I provided for you. I did all of that other stuff. And yet there was still these unmet
hurts. There still hurts. And what I can say is the more you can take responsibility without disclaimers, because we would have rationalized, well, I did the best I could. I was working and I had to feed you and I had to, and the more we can just go, I get it. I can see how it really hurt because you really wanted to connect with me and I wasn't available. And I see the pain it caused.
Yeah.
The more we can just take responsibility, the better. Now, having said that, that's a very rare thing for parents to take. I mean, parents just don't do that. Was not how they were raised. They didn't see their parents taking responsibility. They didn't see their parents saying sorry. So, in all fairness, they didn't know this. Like, this wasn't modeled for them.
Right.
This wasn't what we do, maybe culturally or in our family.
Right.
This isn't how we handled it.
Right. Right. And I think that's really important. You're all in my book. Last year, we I co-authored a book called Unchain My Legacy, and that was one of the awareness that I gave at the end of my chapter to own and take responsibility without deflecting or blaming somebody else, but be in that uncomfortable space.
For sure it is, and breathe through it and say, I got this, I can handle this. Because what we get into, whether it's the mother or the daughter, is I can't tolerate this, I can't stand this, I can't handle my own feelings, so I want to offload them.
Yeah.
On somebody else. I want to displace them on somebody else. Now, this isn't a conscious thought, of course. I'm not thinking, I'm going to load this on you. It's just coming, it's seeping out of me because the pain is so great, because the loss is so great, because the grief is so great. It feels like it's taking me over.
Yes.
And I don't know what else to do with it. So I start with kind of, we got to breathe through it and say, I can handle this.
I can handle it.
Which I'm the only one that can do it. No one else can do it for me. And that's grief too, because I wanted my mom to help me deal with this pain, help me learn how to regulate. Well, she didn't have the tools.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. And you know what? Let's just say, and I want to say that this is not um something that's only prevalent in certain families, or this is just what you do in white families or black families. This goes across the board. This goes to healthy relationships, no matter where you come from, what your cultural background is, what your spiritual upbringing is. We're talking about the core human needs.
Exactly. And how we develop to feel like secure souls in the world. Because a lot of us aren't functioning from a secure place. We're functioning from a very insecure place, looking to feel secure and safe. So we're looking outside of ourselves to feel secure and safe. What we're working on through this, acknowledging our needs, taking care of our needs, is creating safety and security within.
Yeah. And when you feel safe and secure within, then you can have or project that or share that in the spaces where you show up. Right? I think if more people address these issues and even talk about the things that we just shared, the 5 love language as it relates to meeting the needs of your children, I think we'll have less domestic abuse. I think we'll have less domestic violence. I think we'll have less suicide acts and ideations. I think we'll have less of the thing addictions. I think we'll just have less of those things that cause us to go seeking for those needs to be met.
Because what ends up happening is when our needs aren't met, we're in pain.
That's it.
We're in pain, and nobody wants to be in pain. And that's the reason why people think I'll just be done with all this pain. They don't know how to handle the pain. They don't know how to nurture the pain. They don't know how to move through the pain.
It's so true. That is so true. Wow. Well, I'm so glad for all the people who are joining us. Melanie, thank you for being here. Avis, thank you for being here. She says, by engaging with your child, playing is also a learning experience. And oh my goodness, playing is so important. In some cultures, in the culture that I was brought up in, playing was wasting time. And so learning how to play or even play with your children. The other day, my mom and we played jacks together, and it was like, whoa, that was amazing. But playing and learning and being vulnerable with each other is so, so important.
And one of the things is people are, I don't know how to play. I was kind of had to be responsible, do the chores and take care of everything. I don't even know how to play. Like, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is so uncomfortable. I want to be done with it sometimes because it's hard. And then when we do step into play, because we know play is so important for connection, we start going, okay, I can do this. And you start finding some things that you might like that you just didn't even know you liked.
Yeah.
So it's giving yourself permission to say it's okay. And you might not like it at first, and that's okay, because people are like, I'm supposed to like play and I don't really know what to do. It's awkward.
Right. I get really excited when I have clients come in and I'm like, okay, today we're gonna play. And we're gonna play a card game or we're gonna play a board game. And they're like, I don't know if I like this. And I'm like, we're gonna play Jenga. And they'll resist to a point and then they start getting into it. And it just opens up so many possibilities.
I think it's expansion, and creativity is the birthplace of play.
Yes.
Access a deeper part of ourselves than our just cognitive thinking.
Yes. And in a mother-daughter relationship, the daughter gets a chance to see the mother through different lens.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, absolutely. I think in teen years, the mother-daughter relationship becomes more intense oftentimes. And so they lose that sense of play because the daughter's kind of individuating and separating.
Yeah.
If they've passed through these developmental cycles. And sometimes that's threatening to mom. Mom feels lost at that point. And sometimes I think that play is something they're like, I don't want to play. I don't want to do this. And you're like, no, we're going to do Uno tonight. It's going to be fun. It's family fun night. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just roll with it.
Exactly.
Sometimes playing, doing a family game night can be the best thing you did to create connection. It disarms things sometimes.
That's right. That's right. And somebody said, Joseph said, what tools can you recommend to begin the learning process to strengthen and nourish ourselves and our relationships?
Ooh, good question.
I think that play that we just talked about, that's a really good tool.
The play is a great tool. Here's a couple of tools. One is breathing without working on the breath. And the military does this now. This is the key to first starting this work, because if we're not regulated and calm, we will not have connection with our teen. Guaranteed. When I'm not in my calm place, now this takes work. I'm not going to lie. I have to breathe, feel my feet on the floor, do my square breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth. If you count for 4, hold for 4, release for 4. We won't do all that tonight. But what that does is it starts to regulate your nervous system to be open to the connection. So that's one. Self-compassion, we know, is important. So being kind to ourselves.
Let's go back to the breathing for a second. Yes. And my audience is familiar with this because I always share with them about the grounding beads and the grounding bracelets. And we've talked about how to breathe, hold, release. And so my audience is very familiar with that component.
So that's a place I would start first. And awareness, just self-awareness. I could not put a price tag on it, because that helps build healthy relationships with yourself and then with your teens and your kids and your grandkids. I mean, this is the key. Working through some of the past so you can live more fully in the present and have those healthy connections. So those are some, and then listen to podcasts. I have the Close the Chapter podcast that talks a lot about this, but you don't have to listen to mine. I would say listen to podcasts, read books. Yeah. Those are so helpful to begin the journey. And journal, write stuff down. People are like, I don't want to write. I'm like, studies show if you write 10 minutes a day, we are going to live 10 years longer and have healthier relationships, because we're getting out what we've been stuffing down and numbing out.
That is so true. And yes, we want to listen to your podcast. So when we're done, I want you to drop your link in the comment section. And then I would want to add to those tools by saying, go to therapy.
Absolutely.
Go to therapy and help. It helps with that awareness And then the other piece really is self-compassion. Self-compassion, which is giving yourself grace to know that we are imperfect human beings and we're gonna make mistakes. But you know what? We get to be aware, have some awareness about it, and we get to do it again.
And that, I think, is hard for people because we internalize the voices of what we were raised with. And so we have those voices in our head, and it's hard for them to be kind to themselves. And that is something that it's a practice. It's a practice to notice that internal voice that shame says you're not enough. And
Yeah.
teens suffer so much from not feeling good enough. And if the mother can come alongside and acknowledge, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And have compassion for the daughter, I think it helps with that shame
Yeah.
and that ambiguous loss, and being able to communicate. This is the other piece about ambiguous loss, being able to tell somebody, whether that's in therapy or a trusted friend, I'm going through grief right now. I am in this pain. I wish I had this mom. Or maybe the mom has an adoptive daughter that has some attachment stuff that she's grieving over not being able to connect with the adoptive daughter. And she's longing for that and she's craved that. That's grief. Talking, get it out. Don't let it fester inside. That is such a powerful communicate, talk about it. And a lot of times people don't know where to begin. That's that, but acknowledging the feeling within yourself and then talking with somebody else, a therapist or trusted, safe, healthy person is that's the place to start.
That is so true. That is so true. And another tool I'm going to share with my audience, if you're still looking for a place to start, think about getting the mother-daughter conversation cards. No pressure, conversation, dialogue, just to open up and talk a little deeper about some of these things that we shared here tonight. That's an excellent, excellent tool. It's good if you do it with a therapist, but if you can't, just do it and work through it. But don't not do anything.
I love the conversation starter because that is how we begin with these conversations. And I also sometimes, if you guys have a notebook at home, writing letters to each other and leaving it in on their bed, and
Yes.
that's where we can do some acknowledgement. So if they verbally don't want to talk, write a journal back and forth, write a letter back and forth. Some people are more expressive in writing, and use the cards. Use the cards. You could use the card and then write back and forth. I mean, there's many different ways.
So many different ways. You use the cards as prompts and use them to write back and forth. That's an excellent way. Well, Kristen, you have been so amazing and you have been a wealth of knowledge for this audience. And I know that everyone who listens, who has listened or will be listening, I know that they will find great value in this information. Please tell our audience where they can find you.
I have enjoyed this so much. So thank you so much, Anne. You're just so
Absolutely.
beautiful. You can find me on Kristen, KRISTEND Boice, BOICE.com. And I have a 5-day journal prompt. If you put your email address in there, it'll send it right to you and you can begin the work today. And it walks you through the breathing. It starts you getting more connected to what lies within. It's the place I recommend starting. So you can get that for free, no cost. It'll email you the video and the journal prompts so you can start today. And then you can also share that with any family members if you want to do it together and start it together. I've also have the Close the Chapter podcast. It's about closing the chapter on what doesn't serve you and that negative narrative in your head and opening the door to the real you and healthy relationships. And that's on iTunes, any of the platforms. But if you go to kristendboice.com, you can find it there as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you again for your time and sharing the wealth of knowledge with us. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed this. And I'm going to ask you to drop your contact information in the comment section. And if you all are watching us, share this out because this can make the difference for a lifetime, right? Because if we change some of these relationships, we are changing legacies. That's what we're doing.
Start the conversations, pass this along, start the conversations. It's life changing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all, Facebook. It's been great. Tune in next week for another episode of Teen Talk Live. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Ian.